Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flying Officer Marnie Carl. Today we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Cape Matapan. In early 1941, the British and Italian navies fought for control of the Mediterranean. At stake was control of the sea and the ability to wage war in Greece and North Africa. In late March, as British troops of the Mediterranean Fleet covered troop movements to Greece, a cryptanalyst at Bletchley Park broke the Italian naval enigma ciphers. As Italian naval forces set out to threaten British convoys to Greece, the British Mediterranean Fleet, which included the Australian warships HMAS Perth and HMAS Sturt, was set to intercept them. When the forces met in the morning of March 28 near Cape Matapan off the Peloponnesian mainland northwest of Crete, the Vittorio Veneto opened fire before trying to escape. The battle became a pursuit, lasting long into the night. Though the severely damaged Vittorio Veneto made good her escape, the British sank 3 Italian cruisers and 2 destroyers. Matapan was Italy's greatest defeat at sea. The Italian fleet did not venture into the eastern Mediterranean again until the fall of Crete 2 months later. The following year, after the outbreak of war against Japan in the Pacific, HMAS Perth was sunk during the Battle of the Sunda Strait. More than 450 members of Perth's ship's company were killed in the battle, or during the following 3.5 years as prisoners of the Japanese. Today, we commemorate the Battle of Cape Matapan. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. We warmly welcome Mr. Alex McGowan, representing the Naval Association of Australia ACT section. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Thank you. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Reeds or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Stoker second class Henry Stuart Absalom. Henry Absalom was born on the 1st of September 1921 in Terang, Victoria, the son of Henry and Ellen Absalom. Little is known about his early life. He grew up amidst a large family and eventually joined the Royal Australian Naval Reserve. Mobilised for service on the 1st of April 1941, Absalom was first posted to HMAS Lonsdale, the Port Melbourne Naval Training Base, where he remained until June, when he joined HMAS Cerberus, the primary training establishment for naval personnel. In October 1941, as a newly passed out Stoker second class, Absalom joined HMAS Perth, one of the 3 modified Leander-class light cruisers used by the Royal Australian Navy during the early part of the Second World War. Having served in the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, and the Indian Oceans, Perth had transferred to the Pacific to reinforce Allied naval forces opposing Japan. In February 1942, the Allies established an American, British, Dutch, and Australian naval combined striking force for the protection of Java. Perth was a part of the ABDA Eastern Striking Force, which included the Dutch cruisers Java and De Ruyter, the British cruiser Exeter, and the US heavy cruiser Houston. On February 27, the force sailed to intercept the Japanese Eastern Invasion Force, which comprised of 4 cruisers, 14 destroyers, escorting 41 transport vessels. At about 4 p.m, the 2 forces met in an action which lasted much of the night. Outgunned, the Allied force was unable to engage the invasion fleet transports, which escaped to the north as their escorting warships pressed their attack. Allied casualties were heavy. Houston and Perth, the only large Allied ships to have survived the battle, made for the southern coast of Java. The 2 ships attempted to resupply, but fuel shortages meant that Perth only received half of her normal fuel capacity, and a lack of shells left both cruisers with little ammunition. Late on the evening of the 28th of February, as Perth and Houston entered the northern entrance to the Sunda Strait and were tantalisingly close to the open sea and safety, they unexpectedly encountered the Japanese Western Invasion Force, escorted by a large Japanese flotilla. It consisted of 2 light cruisers, 8 destroyers, a mine layer, and was supported by another 4 cruisers, an aircraft carrier, and additional destroyers in the immediate vicinity. Heavily outnumbered, running low on ammunition, and constantly altering course to avoid attack from every direction, the Australian and American cruisers fought against impossible odds. Perth and Houston sank a Japanese transport and a minesweeper and severely damaged a further 3 transports, but the end was inevitable. At midnight, with ammunition running low, Perth's captain, Heck Waller, ordered his ship to try to force a way through. Soon after midnight, the first torpedo struck. With ammunition expended and her crew reduced to firing practice shells and illumination star shells, a second torpedo hit Perth. Waller gave the order to abandon ship as Perth sank in the early hours of the 1st of March. Houston, now the sole Allied combatant, faced the might of the entire Japanese force and was sunk some 20 minutes later. The captains of both vessels went down with their ships. Of the 686 men aboard HMAS Perth, more than half, over 350 officers and ratings, perished. Among their number was Henry Absalom, who was 20 years old. Of the survivors captured by the Japanese, a third died as prisoners of war. With no grave but the sea, today Henry Absalom is commemorated at the Plymouth Naval Memorial in Devon, England, which is dedicated to British and Commonwealth sailors who were lost in the First and Second World Wars and have no known grave. Henry Absalom's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his name listed on the Plymouth Naval Memorial is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Stoker Second Class Henry Stuart Absalom, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea, no flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on ocean bed. They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We'd like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial. Wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.